Om. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. And the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. So we'll pick up in 18th discourse of Bhagavad Gita. Just this as we re-enter it. In this life, and when we choose to make this life intentional instead of reactive, there's a reactive aspect to us, isn't there? Yeah. But there's also something higher than that in us. So intuition, God, however we relate to it. And in order to bring intention into our life, and we've all had intention about something. You set an intention and then you do it or don't do it, correct? Yeah. Whatever the intention is. And so if we set an intention to change our lives or the experience of our lives, what we're really talking about is the inner world, not the outer world. We think that it's that the difficulties that we have are because of outer circumstances. But what we learn when we start to turn this around is it's the inner. It's our closest environment, the room that we're in that's closest to us is the mental environment. It's the mind. It's the nature of the thoughts. What do we think about? How do we relate to it? How do we view the things that happen? Things are constantly happening to us, but we discover it's not the thing that happens to us that affects whether we're balanced or happy or not. It's the way that we're relating to the thing that happens to us in this inner world, in this thought world. And so most of us, until we start bringing intention into the life and really resolve to discover more about this life and take it on, we come from thinking that it's the outer that somehow needs to be addressed, but of course we're helpless to change the behavior of those around us. We just get angry at them. But that doesn't help, does it? And it doesn't make anyone behave any better. This is the time we're in, this Kali Yuga. This is the way we're relating. We're thinking we have to change the outer circumstances. And whatever is our own raison d'etre, whatever is our own reason, we have the idea we need to straighten this out. We need to fix the situation and get people on board. But really, it's the inner that's important. It's the inner that's important. So, inner person. The teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, they're taking place in a battlefield, and most of us would relate to that somehow being the important thing. But really, the teachings are all about the inner person. How to address, how to approach, and finally, how to be free regardless of what's happening to us outside. How to be your own person, under control of yourself. acting the way that you wish to act, thinking the way that you wish to think, speaking the way that you wish to think. And when we know something here, we would say in beneficial ways, being able to think clearly, right? Being able to relate clearly, being of benefit to others and ourselves, and like this. So it's the inner world that's important, and this is what this discourse, all of it, is not about the outer things. It's about, and that's where it starts, is Arjuna is freaking out, and Lord Krishna says, no, you don't get it. First of all, you're eternal. He says, that's where he starts. First of all, you're eternal. There's never been a time when you have not been, nor I, nor all of this. And you're wanting to run away, but this is your opportunity to rise up. That hero's journey. This is the opportunity. It's not about what you do out there. It's about how you adopt and make yourself, as it were. And so this is exactly where we are in this 18th chapter. Lord Krishna is talking about inner attitudes, inner ways of relating, thought, word, action, like this. And so we pick it up. And by the way, he's described in the 18th chapter again, he's described action. And it's not actually us acting is the truth of the matter. We're instigating, we're starting, we're agents of the action. But whenever there's action, whether it's thought, word, or deed, we're relying upon universal factors. That's a deep study, but it's the truth of the situation. So, and we do this sometimes. You can join us. Just place your hands on your lap, if you would. A hand, that's fine. I'm going to ask you to do something, and just pay close attention as you do. If you just lift up your hand, and then put it in front of your face, and look at it. You can turn it and look at it, and then turn it back and put it down. You're not doing this morning, huh? You're refusing? So you don't want to support the Sangha?
I don't really know what it does.
Actually, you do. Actually, you do. And just playing. So, what did you actually do? What did you actually do as an individual? In that process, what did you do? If you break it down a little bit. You listened. Mm-hmm. Is it so? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, to get the hand to move, what did you do? Tell me step by step, what did you do?
You made an intention. Lift it up.
You made an attempt to lift it up. Intention. Oh, that's beautiful. You made an intention to lift it up. So you're aware of that you made an intention to lift it up. Are you aware of doing anything else?
Hold your hand to lift it up and look at it.
Yeah, you told your hand.
Orders.
Yeah, you told your hand.
Yes.
See, you got it, Hari. You're trying to make more of this than there is.
Yes.
And are you aware of anything else? The muscles moving within the hand? No. Are you aware of the muscles moving within the hand? Did you feel them? Did you do something there? No. It seems like it was automatic. You set the intention and it happens. So this morning we won't go deeper into that. But that's something for you to meditate upon and contemplate, because what you're experiencing is your role was to set an intention, and that's called agency. Agency. So you call it forth. That's ego function. But the rest of it, are you aware of the underlying commands to the individual elements of the muscles You know the complexity of moving that muscle, have you ever seen? The complexity of that in order to have the dexterity to do exactly what was done?
Yeah, we're amazing.
Where did you learn that? Did you learn that in school? Isn't that something? The things we take for granted. So what's happened is you've set an intention and universal forces, divine, universal forces, such as the body, which is not ours, which you didn't design, you didn't make, you didn't have anything to do with creating. So the body is the seat of the action, and then all of the thoughts related to commanding that forth, you don't know anything about those. So that's also universal. The function of the arm and the movement and the muscles and the blood vessels and the nerves and all of what's involved, you didn't design it. If you did, you should have patented it a long time ago. Because it's pretty incredible. Right? And it's said that there's actually a presiding deity, so God in the form of this or that oversees these various functions. In the Vedic tradition, that's the way it would be related to. But you call it forward and then it's done for you. Yes? That's the experience. So there's a discussion of action and knowledge and all of this that's coming from this perspective that we've stepped into. Here's where we are. 23. This is action, which we discussed yesterday. And then we're going to step into agency. 23. If you do what is right to do, and you do it without attachment to the fruits, without thought of a reward for yourself, and without judging if it's pleasant or unpleasant, that is pure sattvic action. So that would be said to be action that would lead you towards freedom or beneficial action. However, anything done to fulfill the craving of personal desire or to satisfy the selfish ego or carried out with so much effort that it's straining is rajasic action of a restless mind. So doing for myself. Anything undertaken blindly, that is, without considering the consequences, such as waste or injury, or without even pausing to consider one's ability to succeed, that action is dark with ignorance and is called tamasic. So you have within you the capability to call forth actions, and therefore actions will occur. There are forces, universal forces, that will make it relatively harder or relatively easier to engage in the action that you're wanting to engage in. We would say if the action is in alignment with God's will, which would be virtuous action, then it would be relatively easier, even though there still would be forces, karmic forces, that you would have to push through. If it's in alignment with self-centered ego notion as the agent, then it's, we could say, relatively harder. And the karmic consequences, we were discussing karma last night, if you're doing just for yourself, the karmic consequences are relatively more suffering. Relatively less beneficial, more self-centered, and therefore more painful, relatively more painful. Does that make sense? So they tend to bind you. This is what's being discussed here. Actions taken on behalf of personal agency. I want, I need, I'm going to get, etc. They tend to bind us. They bind us up where? They bind us up in our psyche, in our inner world. Because whatever choices we make and whatever actions we perpetrate, we carry the fruit of those around with us in the inner world. If you say something terrible to a person out of anger, you know that you carry that with you afterwards? Yes? Okay. So all the things that we do for not good reasons, self-centered reasons, we carry the fruit of that with us in the psyche until somehow we find a way to clear it. When we say working out karma, this is really what we're talking about. Working out the detrimental, the binding stuff. Does that make sense? And then dark-centered actions. We're lazy. We don't know why we're doing. We don't have any intention behind it. We don't understand what we're doing like that. That's the third. When we engage in actions like that, they're dark or tamasic, and they breed more darkness. Does that make sense? Okay, that's what's being shared here. So, and understanding the discussion on karma is helpful, understanding that action always brings a reaction, and the reaction first is in the mind, in our own mind. When we choose to be angry, and this is a hard one because there's a reactive tendency of anger, but then we can choose to glorify it. We can choose to let it go, baby. We can choose to make it righteous, which we'll regret later on, but we can. And so in the inner, that practicing of anger, practicing of the self-centered nature, will make the self-centered nature even stronger. That makes sense, right? It'll make the tendency towards anger even stronger, harder to be free of, etc. Okay. So let's move on. Agency is next. Agency. You could say like why to do or in what spirit to do would be the agency, and we'll get a flavor of that. When the agent of an action, that is the individual, and what you just did with the hand, so there's an agency there. You chose and you instigated, you called it forward, right? Yes? Okay, you got that, Ari. I know. I love you, Ari, so much. Everybody, really. So, agency then means you call it forward in action. Really, you're not doing the action. It's the most mysterious thing when you really look at it. If you really, really look at it, if you really, really contemplate it, you see everything that you say you're using in order to act is universal. The body is universal. The elements the body is made of is universal. The prana, we were working with prana yesterday. You can call it forward, you can manage it, but it's never yours. It always remains universal. The same energy that powers this body powers the sun, and the movement of the solar system, and the movement of the atoms. So it's universal. The same intelligence that underlies the thoughts is universal. Even the plants participate in it. The same intelligence. So, but the individual can be the agent. You can choose what you want to do and what you don't want to do, correct? That's your experience. You can choose what you want to. I want to do this. I want to be this. Yes? I want to go there. I want to be free. Whatever it is that you can choose. Or I don't want to participate. Or I don't want to do what's wrong. I don't want to do what's harmful. These are all choices that we can make based upon various factors. And then we become the agent of the action that follows. Okay. So Hari here demonstrated beautifully he did not want to do. So he says, screw this, I've done it enough. Now that's a thought process going on, but then as the agent, he says no. You, my dears, said yes. We'll go along.
It's always fun.
So when the agent of an action, do I understand what we're talking about now? When the agent of an action, meaning the individual, has let go of attachment to the fruits and thus is free of the egoistic feeling of separateness, yet is still full of enthusiasm and fully committed, then that agent is not affected by the so-called success or failure. That's sattvic agency. What's being described is when you've seen that you'll get what you need as long as you do what's beneficial, then when we've really seen it, then why do I need to do something for me? Because whenever I try to do something for me, it always results in failure anyway. Let me just do what's right. Let me just learn to do what's beneficial. Let me just learn to live my life for the benefit of all. Now, this is a big shift inside. Yes? But when that shift is happening, then you may see inside in the conscious mind that you realize, oh my God, I can't put myself first because I die a little bit every time I do that. And I just can't do it. I have to have something to serve or something to God willing, to deal with or to benefit, and put that first, whether it's the poor or the sick or family, but hopefully a bigger family than our limited family. Because I'm not separate, and every time I do for me as a separate being, I'm just reinforcing this notion, this idea that I'm separate. So, yeah. So then at some point on the inside, really it becomes anathema, like I can't just do for this. I'm not just this anyway. And so I'm not interested in the fruit. I don't want to, I just want to do what's beneficial. If chanting's beneficial, cool. Let me get this body up as early as we possibly can, and we're just going to sit and chant. Because God knows I've engaged in so much stuff that's not beneficial. Is thinking positive thoughts towards people, is being a well-wisher, is thinking that I want you to be free, that I want you to be happy, that I want you to know the highest, that I want you to be in union with the highest. Is that beneficial? Yeah. Okay, then let me be the agent of that. Let me call that forward. Does that make sense? Let me call that forward then. So that state is said to be a pure state of agency, which leads to the end of egoism, where it doesn't rule you or even try to rule you at some point. So you even start to lose the feeling of being separate at that point. It's as if you forget who you are. And that idea of who we were was an imaginary idea anyway, because we weren't that. We weren't the body, we weren't the thoughts, and we actually become very less interested in who we are anyway, although being less interested in it, in a way, you know it more. Because you're in union with the unity more, with the purity more. So he's saying the agent, the individual, who's acting for the benefit of all, full of enthusiasm and fully committed. I'll share an observation. When I started walking on pilgrimage, through grace, I am so grateful that I'd had this horrific depression for 3 years, and I just wanted to kill myself. I couldn't get up and all this. I mean, I got up, but everything was a drudgery, and I just wanted to kill myself. That was the number one. And I'm so grateful for that, because it helped me to let go of all of my personal angst. I was able to see that the way I had been living, it was not in any way beneficial. And so it helped to let go of that. And then I was in India. And then when it came time to pilgrimage, because of the suffering, and being able to reflect on things that had happened to me which brought light into life, where someone smiled at me when I was in the doldrums, or someone offered something to me, or someone acknowledged or pointed to something higher in me, the teachings and such gratitude for that. And by the time I got to pilgrimage, the resolve I had made was, that's what I want to do. So, and it starts with the inside. It starts with the thoughts. That's what I want to do. And so I asked God, which is the universal, any of the power it comes from, please help me to do this. And so there was an active pursuit of just being a well-wisher. And then we could say living as a prayer. Living as a prayer. So rooting on the inside in prayer, may all be free, may all be happy, may all know the light, may all feel that they are loved, may all know that they're loved, like this. And then there was a resolve that was taken. Everyone I meet, and most people that I would meet, and still today it's the same. When I drive around, it's the same. But when I was walking, most people that I meet in their cars. And they were driving towards me because I would walk towards traffic. And so I resolved, let me intentionally bring a beneficial thought to every person that I make contact with. This was the intention that was set. And so there's an agent in the action. Again, I wouldn't say I really did it, but I set the intention for it, and then I simply did my best to lift that hand. And sometimes it was very hard to lift that hand, because sometimes I would see people that there were very judgmental ideas about. Right? So I'd see someone who was involved in the slaughter of animals, for example, and judgmental ideas would come, and it was very hard to lift the hand then. But I would say, dear Lord, please help me. I have to think a beneficial thought. And then it would come like that. And so the rest of it is mysterious. But that process of really taking a choice to be an agent of beneficial action in the world is possible. And it plays out. So that's the sattvic agency, if that makes sense. And what do I need? At some point I realized, if the I that's this body, just a bed and just a little bit of food, that was it. And that opened up the world so much. That was before I went to India, because realizing that, it's like, well, I don't really need money. I always thought I needed money, but I just need a little bit of food. And I'm not the body anyway, but the body does, right? A little bit of food and a place to get some sleep and an opportunity to serve. That was all. So I figured I could go anywhere. I could go into a retirement home. I could go into anywhere. It just took all the stress away about what am I going to do and where am I going to be and all of that. It's like, well, wherever I'm placed, I guess. I'll just volunteer. I'll just put my hand up. Wherever you put me is fine. And with that attitude, I was put into pilgrimage. And with that attitude, I was put here. And I didn't do any of it. Now, the second and third, I have a lot of familiarity with. The Rajasic agent, individual, acts primarily out of personal desire, or in order to get the fruits of his or her actions, or out of greed, cruelty, or for other impure purposes. That agent of action is easily carried away by excitement, or dismay about the results of the actions. And the experience is that we're so fixated on what comes back to me, what do I get out of it, the more rajasic, the more passionate it is, the more fixated we are about the fruit. And so generally, this society is such a passionate society, rajasic in this way, which means everybody's forgotten about the work itself and the attitude underlying the work, and everybody's doing to get something. And it's all about, so we bring people into the ashram who say, I want to break. You want to break? What do you want to break from? I want to break from the world. I'm sorry, you have to stay longer. I want to break from myself. Okay, come on. I'm tired of myself. Okay, come on. You're welcome. What to do? Wash dishes. Okay. And so, wash dishes. You look at the dish after, it's not clean. Why is the dish not clean? I don't know. I put it in the dishwasher. It's not my fault that it's not clean. Rajasic action. I forgot to turn it on. Tamasic agency. Dullness. Dullness. The tamasic agent does things stubbornly, but we'll do it every day like this. Stubbornly. Yet without steadiness. Without steadiness. His or her actions, which are often, we'll say, vulgar, deceitful, malicious, and dishonest, arise from a mind that is lazy, procrastinating, and easily dejected. Tamasic. So we can see it in others, but we'll see these tendencies in ourselves. We'll see all three of these in ourselves. We'll see all three of them. The purity, sometimes we'll have this real clarity and we'll recognize, and then the monthly rent is coming due. Come on, we got to get some money here. And then it becomes all about me for a while, and then, I'm so tired, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any difference what I do. That's tamasic agency. And then we'll just introduce the next part of the discussion with these two slokas, 29 and 30. Listen now, Arjuna, and I will fully teach you the 3 degrees of understanding and the 3 types of will according to each one's predominant guna. So we've been stepping through in this chapter 18 an understanding of action. Who is acting anyway, and what role am I playing in this? And then we've looked at and we've discussed knowledge and the role that knowledge, pursuit of knowledge, what can be known. It's really an exhaustive. Every single aspect of life is being explored here, Every single aspect in detail. That's the beauty of the Gita, is if we have an interest in really stepping back from our own ideas and learning something about this life, and why am I here? Why did I choose this? Why did I end up in this situation? Why am I not happy? Why do these tendencies arise? If these questions really come forward and are important, then study of Bhagavad Gita, which is really essential teaching that helps us to understand why and what were the components of it. And now I want to change it. How do I change it? Along with many other teachings, but Bhagavad Gita is such a teaching. So we've discussed all of this, and then he comes to the most crucial factors, which are the choices that we make, how we make the choices, and then how we propagate, how we bring power into those choices in order to be successful at actualizing the choices. So that relates to the intellect, conscious mind, and willpower. And that's what's being introduced now. So I'll just read the slokas, but this is what it's relating to. Listen now, I'll fully teach you the 3 degrees of understanding. That's the conscious mind, how we understand. Not what we know, Does it make sense that understanding and knowledge are two different things? Okay. So understanding is a process. We come to understand. Knowledge is what you know or think that you know. And you decide what knowledge you want. And that's based on your understanding of what's important for you. Okay. And then if we go back to that example, you don't have to do it again, Hari, so you're off the hook. But if you imagine for a moment that there were a book sitting on that hand when you decided to lift it up, you can ask yourself the question, what would you have done differently? You still would have set an intention, right? You would have put more willpower into it. You're still not the one doing it, but you call it forward with more intention. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Stronger intention. That's what willpower is. The person who's had a limb in a cast, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but if you have, you know that when the cast comes off, it doesn't want to move. And that's the karmas, that's those accumulated karmas of inaction for a period of time. And so it's as if it's become solid now and I can't move it. And how do you move it? Well, physical therapy, but you know the pain of that, and you accept the pain and you say, I'm going to try harder. What does it mean to try harder? It means if you look in your mental factory, you see, you bring your attention to it more, you set a firmer resolve, right? And you grunt and all of that, but that's the body grunting. In the mental world, you're seeing, I'm going to do this. I must do this, right? That's all willpower. So that's where we're stepping now when we pick up Geeta tomorrow morning. Comments or questions on the discussion this morning?
Does karma get burned by the process of, changing the thoughts and the actions and deeds? Thought, actions, deeds to more pure, and then because you're not doing the same things or doing things the way you used to do it, you're doing it totally different.
Some karma gets burned and some karma gets created.
Right. But
Okay.
It's good karma. Well, not good or bad, but it...
Well, no. If in that concept, you could say karma is born of beneficial action.
beneficial.
Yeah, so pleasant karmas or good karmas in that way, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have not the intention of gaining the fruit, the karma for yourself, then that is a burning, as it were, a burning of karma.
Because you're not doing things self-centered and selfishly.
Correct. You're offering. It's an offering.
Oh.
If it's a real offering,
Okay.
then that's burning it. So when we say work out, it's really the only way to work it out.
Change.
Ultimately, okay. Any other questions or comments on the discussion this morning? Yes, dear Jody.
It would seem, if you can just choose to make better choices, and especially once you quit, old ways and behaviors and make amends, whether
Yes.
it be verbally or, to people, places
Yes.
and things, whatever, or living amends by choosing to not do those old behaviors and things.
Yes.
And, then your slate's clean, right? And you forgive others and yourself.
Yes.
And then you choose, to do the next right thing for the right reason.
Yes.
And then it's like everything aligns.
Yes. So that's what spiritual path is. That's what you're describing. Yes. Yes.
And, and it's like, it's not that hard.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard because we hit several points of fear along the way. So there's such a strong, so it's the hardness, the difficulty. People would ask me in pilgrimage, what's the biggest problem you've encountered? And I would just answer honestly, it's always in the mind. And that's where it's hard.
Don't you think fear is opposite of faith, and that you can choose faith?
Yeah, but you're going to be tested on every single step. You're tested on every single step in it. And finally, faith can't be blind faith, because blind faith will be shattered. If you say, I trust in the Lord to take care of my family, then invariably something's going to happen to your family. And that faith will be tested. And you're going to have to discover something more real. You're going to have to keep going deeper. It'll continue to make you to keep going deeper. To get not to faith, but knowledge. To knowing that you are eternal. To knowing that all is eternal. To knowing the way this world process works. You can't know all of the workings of it, but you can come to a place where you can see it clearly enough to trust it, to allow it to do its part, and to participate in that process in a beneficial way. So, but yes, what you've described is the process. Whatever resolve we make, as you know, you'll be tested on it. So if you're in 12-step and you've had this addiction or that addiction, and then you go through the 12-step process, you make amends, all of this helps you to be clear of that. Now, the mind is like a very young child wanting to be with its mother, and it will continue to look for its mother until it finds it. And the absolute God, Lord, Brahman, whatever name we use, Allah, whatever name it is, universe is its mother. So the addictive tendencies will remain. They'll move to something else until anger or whatever, until we bring it back home. And home is the highest. Home is the Lord. So we'll say a funny thing, which is the addictive tendencies remain until the mind finds what is greater than what it's been getting addicted to.
What's greater than love?
Right. When it's, nothing. It'll get veiled. And those are our tests. So if we continue to remove the veils, which are all related to the inner world, the inner person, if we keep removing the veils, if we keep up with that process, then we come into daylight. Then we come into the daylight. Oh, very good. Indeed. So it is hard. And we're not coming from the school of saying it's hard means we can't do it. You have to do what's hard. That's the hero's journey, for goodness sakes. You have to do what's hard. It's not easy to transform yourself. It's not easy to come into the light. But if you're motivated enough to do it, then of course you can do it. If you're motivated enough to do it, of course you can come into it, because it's your own true nature. It's your own highest nature. It's not apart from you. It's not separate from you. Still, it has to be attained to, because we have to rip off the veils. We have to come to the things that have been hiding it from us, as it were, and remove those, the ideas, the beliefs, the habitual natures that have worked against the revealing, all of this. In Raja Yoga Sutras, and Ethan is reading Raja Yoga Sutras, you'll come to this. The first sutra of the second chapter, second book, which is the book on practices, says that that acceptance of pain for progress and relinquishing the fruit is called yoga. Any habit that you change, you know that you have to work against a force in order to change it. And we're dealing with habits that rooted in the idea of being separate. and then all of the stuff that we've added on to that along the way. They can all be changed, but we will encounter pain, and we have to be willing to accept that pain. It's an inner pain. It's not easy to change these, especially when you have a factor within you saying, but I can't let go of that. Right? But I can't do that. All the time we'll talk with dear souls, dear people who say, well, that's all fine, but I can't do that. Well, then, my dear, you've just touched on why you came here this birth. Now you know what you need to do. Oh, okay. We should close. Anything else?
Just real quick.
Yes, dear. Cindy.
So sometimes I feel like my path, I get enlightened and I make this progress and I'm happy, or I see other folks that have, just recovery example,
Yes.
have really found their way, and then all of a sudden they go back to that lifestyle or addiction or
Yes.
when everything was so good.
Yes.
And is it just is that the pain that you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, that experience isn't the pain. The pain is coming from the intentional pain. The pain is coming from staying the course, because staying the course is so darned hard. Because those old tendencies will arise. You will be tested on every choice that you make. And you have to pass the tests in order to come into the daylight. It is a process, though. So, and where you see that, you're seeing progress, but you're also seeing how easy it is to slip back into old habits, old behaviors. And if you don't have some higher goal that's more important to you, and we're used to having goals to get something that we imagine is going to give happiness. But that can't be the goal. It won't sustain you. Because when you get it, you'll find happiness wasn't there after all. So someone can say, I will stop drinking in order to get my life together so that I can have a wonderful wife. How long before they'll be drinking again?
Setup.
It's a setup.
Oh.
So, in other words, it has to be a goal that will feed you, that will sustain you.
That will keep.
That when attained, it's the real thing. And so it has to be love, not the idea of love. It has to be the eternal, not the idea I will live forever in this body. It has to be that which is really higher. Again, however we relate, virtue, something that we're offering, something that we want the ability to offer. And that's meaningful, or a place that we want to be, not physical. If we can hold on to that. And so I'll say God, and God is like the scariest word in the English language. But we say it understanding what it means. It is our mother, father. It is our reality. It is the underlier of this entire world. The name is meaningless, but it's pointing to something that has meaning, which is not a thing, which is the real here. Shivaya, good morning. Good morning, Dal. Hi, dear. So, in other words, it has to be a high ideal. And then, if we're so committed that we'll really hold on to that ideal no matter what, then we'll find the capacity to get through it. But in the meantime, we have to suffer the other ideas, the other tendencies that are still in the subconscious and all of that. But having said that, it's a process. And even the one who falls back is still making progress because they're learning something they need to see. They need to see how easy it is if they don't stay on it to fall, right? And that will serve them when they come back to it the next time. So in this way, encourage yourself, be encouraging to others, because everything is about learning here. We're always learning. We learn what serves us by experience, and we learn what doesn't serve us by experience. Thank God for Shastra, for the scriptures, for the teachings, because if we can have some faith in them, then we're really propelled. That helps us to move forward faster, because that gives us something to hold on to while we're in the journey. Bhagavad Gita is a great one in that way. It's so profoundly powerful, and if we can find a way to relate to it, not as an absolute truth. It's not about absolute truth. The absolute truth is within you. The absolute truth is underlying this world. But there are some things, if we can accept them and listen to them and present ourselves for them, then they'll, such as the moral codes and such, that will help us to move faster on our path. Okay, we'll close. 174, the short final prayers in RT. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, let us abide in thee forever and ever. On below Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki, for all the saints and sages of all the traditions.